So I mentioned as the city ordinance designates the water utilities director as the secretary, and so therefore being the only officer currently of this new board, I will convene the meeting by calling this meeting to order of the regular meeting of the Water Advisory Board of the City of San Angelo at 10:03 a.m. Let me say on behalf of the city that we certainly appreciate each of your willingness and desire to serve on this board. I look forward to working with each one of you. We have a lot of issues ahead of us to deal with, and I think it'll be good to work together through this and just move into the future. So with that, is the meeting called to order? The first item of business would be the election of officers. So we would entertain a motion of electing as by ordinance a chairman and a vice chairman.
Well, I would throw out nominating Mike Boyd as chair.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to elect Mr. Boyd as the chair. Is any further discussion on that issue?
Are y'all sure?
I know you are a banker. I had to throw that in.
Got my big chief tablet, yeah.
Can you add everything up?
Yeah, twice.
All right, all in favor of that motion, please raise your right hand. All opposed? None. It's unanimous decision. With that,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Boyd, I would turn the meeting over to you.
All right, wow. Okay, and the next order of business to elect a vice chair. Is there a recommendation from the floor? If not, being in.
I would nominate Mr. Mead. Is it Mr. Mead?
Weiss.
Wees. Okay. I would nominate Mr. Wees.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye, or raise your right hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next, public comment. Is there any public comment from anyone in the audience? There being none, we'll go to our regular agenda. First item on the regular agenda is adoption of bylaws. I think we have one suggestion on the bylaws that was a change that was sent to us. Is that correct? Page 2, section 3,
Correct.
talks about a quorum.
I had made the comment of quorum should be at least 4 voting members as opposed to just 4 members, and it's been corrected on the bylaws, so
Right.
Okay.
looks fine.
That's what's in the new copy. Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the bylaws as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Ben?
Second.
Thank you. Second. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Update on Hickory project, please.
What I wanted to do is just take a few minutes to kind of go through where the Hickory project is. That's obviously one of the most significant projects that is undergoing right now for any additional water supply. And then I would, if possible, I would like to just kind of segue that into the next item, which is the discussion of other water supply options and issues that we'll be facing, and the things that I think we'll need to be discussing in the near future. Just real quickly, I just want to kind of, I know that most of you are probably more familiar with the Hickory project than I am, but maybe not everybody, so just kind of go as an overview of that project. You know that the city purchased the water rights in a well field or a property about 65 miles from San Angelo back in the early 70s, and which was a very thoughtful, a lot of forethought given to that, and certainly has proven to be pretty valuable to the city. Just to kind of show you the layout of the well field, just so you have an understanding that I think it's important as we move forward. But there were 9 existing wells when this project was just recently started. Thank you. And those on this the slide here are the boxes that are shown in the blue boxes around them. There were 6 additional wells that were drilled that are being completed now as part of the project that we're undergoing, which eventually there will be 15 wells on that well site. Just to kind of put this in perspective, that area that you're seeing there covers 52 sections, about 35,000 acres. So it's a pretty large area that these wells are in. Then this is just a picture of the last well that's being drilled. The rest of them are, 4 of them are complete and they're being connected to, but the wells are complete. One of them is being produced now, and then this is the final well that's being drilled. It's scheduled to be completed sometime in June. The pump station is still is almost complete. It is part of it is in operation, but this is the well field pump station that will pump the water from there into the city of San Angelo from the well field. Water is pumped to the city, and this unassuming building, a large building, is constructed at the city's current water treatment facility. But once you get inside, it changes a little bit. It's pretty impressive. And just real quickly, let me go through the process here. As you know, the water from the groundwater from the Hickory Aquifer has both iron and radium in it that has to be removed. So part of that process is when the water enters the facility, air is injected into the water where it oxidizes the iron. Then that water goes through these this oxidation vessels, and that gives a detention time for the iron to oxidize. And then it goes into these pressure filters where there's an anthracite material that removes the iron from the water. It leaves that and goes into these WRT vessels, and that's the radium removal process. It's an ion exchange process that has a resin material in it that as the water goes through these trains, and there's 3 of these vessels in each one of the trains. As the water goes through that material, as it comes out the other side, the radium has been reduced. And just to give you an example, it's coming in at about, and I never can say this, but 22 picocuries, and it's leaving at less than 2. The drinking water standard is 5. So these vessels are working very well in this process. Just to kind of talk about the Hickory aquifer a little bit and how much water that's actually available from the well field. In the early 90s, about mid-90s, I believe, the city of Brady actually sued the city and the Groundwater Conservation District on how much water that the city could be producing from the Hickory Aquifer. And there was a court-ordered settlement agreement, if you will, that specified specifically how much water could be produced each year from the aquifer. And as that started in 96, we were allowed to produce 1,500 acre feet a year with a maximum production, annual production of 10,000 acre feet. The good thing, though, is that order also allowed that water to be banked. So if it was not being used, it could go into a bank to be used in the future. Since none of that water has been produced, currently there's about 39 or almost 40,000 acre feet of water that has been banked. The amount that we can remove annually changes periodically, and currently we can produce 2,750 acre feet a year with a maximum of 15,000 acre feet. And the allocation is 2,750. The max production is 15,000 acre feet. That changes to 5,000 on the allocation in 2021 through 2026, and the annual amount stays at 15,000 acre feet through 2026. However, in 2026, we can no longer bank any water. So at that point, what has been banked is all there is, and it would begin, if used, obviously. If we use more than the annual allocation, we would see that amount begin to reduce.
Mr. Chair, can we ask a question?
Sure.
Can you give us for at least for my benefit, these folks are maybe water experts, but I'm having difficulty understanding the difference between the allocation and the maximum production.
The allocation is what we are allowed to bank. Okay, so we are allocated beginning in 96 was 1,500 acre feet a year. Okay, we could use that amount at that time, but if we didn't, then that was what would be banked. Okay, but once we had more than 10,000 acre feet in the bank, we could produce that on an annual basis. So
I understand.
from the beginning.
The short answer on that is that we only put the pipeline's only now in production.
Correct.
And up until this point, we've been accumulating interest every year. And that interest has just been banking. That's what he's talking about.
Okay.
And we haven't used a lick of that to date. But we can't use our entire bank in 1 year because it could, in theory, dwindle the entire field down. So that's why there's a maximum allocation, maximum production, no matter what our bank is.
Excellent explanation. And the interest is the allocation. That's how much that we can bank annually.
And you said after 36, you cannot, there's no more bank?
After 26.
After 26.
But we don't lose the bank.
We don't lose the bank. We don't-
Correct. It will stay there, and
can't build
as
it.
long as we do not use it, it sits there for us to use in the future. I want to kind of, this chart, explain this to you. What I did was kind of look at what, with the banked water and what it would mean if we were using that water only. And what I wanted to look at here was if we did not have any surface water, what the groundwater would actually, provide for us. The green line here represents what our annual usage is. The blue line is the banked water, which we've got about 40,000 acre feet currently, and then the bottom line is the actual usage of the hickory water based on what our allocation, what our annual production rates, max production rates would be.
Can I chime in on something? Let me
Please.
just, because this could be a little bit confusing the way this is laid out. Because, the question today, right now, is how much are we using? Are we using the hickory water today?
We're
Is the
using-
pipe turned on?
We are. The plant is online, and I didn't finish that conversation while ago and discussing that. It is online, and we are using it. As long as we have available surface water, we anticipate only using the hickory at about 1 million gallons a day, and that's only because it has to operate. The WRT vessels need to stay wet, and so the plant has to operate continuously. The minimum amount is about 1 million gallons a day.
Thank you.
One of the things that I want to talk about, though, is that maybe I had these slides a little out of order, but let's talk about the Ivy Reservoir for just a minute. As you can see, the Ivy Reservoir filled up in the early 90s and has been basically in a decline since that time. In around 08, it picked up some water, but it's been steadily declining since then. And as you all see the reports, it's not doing very well. It's got about 70,000 acre feet in it and is declining. The Colorado River Municipal Water District anticipates that if there's not any significant flows into that lake, that by this time next year it won't have enough water to be able to be used. So I think that's kind of what's driving what we're looking at here with the hickory and what that means to us and what it means to us as far as looking into the future, what we need to do. The Spence Reservoir is the other reservoir that is water that's made available to San Angelo is virtually dry. It has not picked up any significant water, so it doesn't play into the equation right now either. So moving back up to this slide, if this time next year we were having to rely specifically on the hickory water, first off, we can't meet all of the city needs with just the hickory. It's going to take additional water supply to do that. So we could use some of the water out of Nasworthy and Twin Buttes to prolong the hickory water and while we were developing something else. But if we were having to pull our maximum amount that we can out of the hickory, you can see that by the 2022, all of the banked water would be gone. And then based on the allocated amount, in 23 and 24, we would have to drop back to our 5. Once the the banked water is gone, we would have to drop back to the allocated amount of 5,000 acre feet a year. So it would be a significant, it would be significantly lower than what our demands would be.
And our annual
Demand
use on
is-
water is,
It's about 13,000 acre feet right now.
13,000.
So I'm assuming that green line is projected.
That's just projected at 3%. I mean, you know, that's just a guess, but
Yeah, sure.
I think it's probably, you know, there was, the city had some significant conservation efforts over the last couple of years. And so looking at what the production was, I think that's a reasonable guess. Obviously, that would change if there's not any water available, but that is, I think, what would be a reasonable growth projections.
13,000 is what our current usage is.
Correct.
Correct.
Just, am I wrong that just 3 years ago or so, we were in the 10 to 11,000?
I don't think, I think that last year it was pretty low, but no, I think it actually has been more significant than that. And let me ask, Ricky was.
I just recalled the numbers being closer to 10,000 and slightly above 10,000 several years ago.
Oh,
No, we've actually historically gone significantly down in usage. We've been using in the neighborhood of 15 to 18,000 a year, and we've gone with our conservation efforts. We've done a dramatic improvement on what we've been using.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
thanks.
One more question. As far as all the growth in town, the hotels and things like that, that they don't pay attention to how long they run the faucets. Is there a law, is there a requirement to provide water usage for people like that, for the growth in the community and the way we do things? Or is there a way we can cap some of that? I mean, on things that you don't have a lot of control over?
Well, we do have some control over irrigation,
Right.
you know, through our conservation plan and by ordinance. And so that would be the way to control that growth. As far as a continued development, I mean, I obviously I think the city could have some control over that, but I'm not, you know, that's kind of a tough
Not a
place
good-
to go.
Yeah.
But at some point, if you don't have the water supply, that's what you do.
Bill, so for new development, we don't offer low, what do they call them, the low
Low flow
fixtures
fixtures.
and so forth, and or don't we
Well,
encourage that?
We actually do that through our conservation program. We have low flow fixtures, low flow shower heads, and
Toilets
of course there is some requirement for low flow toilets and those things. But I mean, I think all of those, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes when we talk about conservation efforts, because
Okay.
we're looking at some additional things in that regard that I think might answer your question on that. So this slide just shows that if we were to, if we had some other water supply source that we could, you know, by utilizing the Hickory water, we could maintain that banked water in for the future, and I think that would be obviously a desirable thing. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will just kind of, if I may, talk about the other water supply options and other issues that we have.
Can I ask just a couple more questions? Number one, on the expanded well field, there's the 6 wells that we were expanding, and they're being drilled. You saying 4 of those are complete?
4 are complete.
Okay, 4 are complete. Have they been tested, and how's the flow rates versus what we were anticipating?
They have been tested. They're not we're still connecting those up. We can't take water out of those, but the wells are completed. The flow rates are doing very well. The first couple were kind of along the lines of what the original 9 were. The next 4, it seems like as we move farther to the west on those wells that the transmissivity is improving and the wells are actually producing very nicely. And the next to the last one that we just did the pump test this week proved to be maybe probably one of the second best that we've produced. So yes, they're doing very well.
That's good news.
Yes, it is.
One question that I had regarding the treatment plant, is it only designed to treat, to remove radium? or can it be used for any other
It's only designed to remove iron and radium.
iron radium?
That's all.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
What other constituents were you?
Well,
Thinking about-
I didn't know, if as, the years come, if there's another supply, another source, that has something else in it, could it be used in this treatment plant?
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that, Ben. There might be, depending on what it is, obviously, whether the, pressure filters are, if it's just a filtration issue, then, that might be possible. But it would just be entirely, I guess, depending on what it is and how, how brackish maybe it really
Exactly.
is.
If I can just tell you a little bit of dialogue that we had back in council, because that was part of the discussion on whether it was the ion exchange or whether it went to
Reverse osmosis.
RO system, and it was a matter of cost, because the RO gave a whole lot more flexibility. You lost a lot of water, but the cost was extremely high.
Okay.
And so that's why it was that we kind of took the point at that of let's define and let's confine just for this issue right now, and let's deal with this, only the stake at hand.
Sure.
Right. And I think,
I'm sorry. go
yes, sir.
ahead.
No, please.
Which leads to the next question I have. Is there a difference in delivery cost of Hickory water versus our surface water supplies?
There is. There's actually not a lot, and normally there would be with groundwater, but because of the radium removal, it does raise the cost. So it's probably not. They're probably pretty close at this point.
But that's an ongoing, as we've, getting violent here, but that's an ongoing as we have, it's not part of the regular monthly bill that we get, because we've got part of the bill is to pay for the loan payment, and part of it for the, which was also for the treatment plant. I mean, so it's not a fluctuating type cost, correct?
Correct.
So it's kind of
It's-
static
Right. It's built into the rate and the debt
for this
service.
period of time.
That's
So it's an
correct.
amortized cost
Correct.
for a specific period of
Correct.
time. Okay.
Correct.
And I'd be happy to, if y'all want, at the next meeting, or I can send you more specifics on those costs and the comparison, be more than happy to prepare that and do that for you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question as well. Oh, you've got one.
I was just going to ask, is Brady the only other municipality tapping into the Hickory Aquifer, and are there others planning on doing the same?
As far as I know, Brady is the only other significant user of it. There's probably some rural usages in that area. I don't know of any efforts or activity at all for increased development of the hickory.
And is the Hickory a renewable aquifer
Yes.
It is to some extent, yes.
to some extent? Okay.
It's not a rapid recharge, correct?
That is correct. It's like most confined aquifers, or artesian aquifers, if you will, where it's basically a layer between two hard strata that dips significant fairly deep, and so our wells are over 2,000 feet deep. The outcrop where the recharge would be is in the Llano area, and so it's quite a large distance, and so when the water doesn't just travel quickly through that like it would a karst type aquifer, or like the Edwards aquifer, where you basically have holes in the rock, so the recharge is fast. So the recharge is slower.
If we have to rely completely on Hickory Aquifer, we'll be draining it pretty quickly.
Well, there's a lot of water there. I mean, obviously it would create some depressurization, but there's a lot of years of water in the Hickory, even with the minimal recharge rather.
I will tell you again, back when all the discussions were about getting the $120 million loan and building the pipeline, building the treatment plant, expanding the well field, all that kind of stuff, the whole discussion, and I know some of the public didn't want to hear this, that was the Hickory does not solve our water problems. It is a patch. It's a portion. It's
part of the
we kind of
portfolio.
viewed it as almost an emergency type thing.
Right.
You flow a little bit as you need to keep the pumps and keep everything running properly, but it's not our get out of jail free card. It may be for a year, or 2 years, but it's not our long-term answer to everything.
That's correct. Certainly could be a part of the long-term portfolio, if you will, but it's not, in and of itself, it's not the end-all for water
It's not the
supply for
answer.
San Angelo. Right. So let's talk about that. What are our options? Where are we? What do we need to do? Obviously, conservation is probably the cheapest water that we have. It can be a double-edged sword. I mean, it's important. It's what we should do. We should be good stewards of the water. However, water supply systems are a fixed cost in industry, and so just because we don't use as much water doesn't mean our costs go away. But when we don't use as much water, the revenue stream has a tendency to dry up, and so we have to find that balance. Is how do we continue to not only maintain the system, but how do we go develop additional water supplies that aren't cheap with a reduced revenue stream? And so we have to maintain that, and we have to find that balance. We are doing a rate study that I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, but part of that is looking at some more conservation measures and what conservation incentives, Roland, that you were talking about, Jonathan, what we could do, what would that cost, and what would be the return on that. So that's some things that we're continuing to look at, because I just think that's good business, is to continue to use the water as wisely as possible in the city. I think there's a lot of options maybe still there, and we'll be looking at those. I want to talk a little bit about the West Texas Water Partnership. I'm sure you're aware of that. It's a partnership between the city of San Angelo, city of Abilene, and city of Midland to look across the state, and look at where we might be able to collectively combine our efforts to find some water supply. The needs are different. For example, Midland is in pretty good shape right now, and Abilene is actively developing some options for themselves, and so I don't think we have the needs are not consistent between the three partners. So I think that this is probably much more of a long-term effort, a long-term solution, and so the short-term or intermediate term we're probably individually on our own, if you will, and to look at what we might be able to do here in San Angelo. The partnership is active. It's still continuing to search for what some options in the future would be. Unfortunately, as you know, there's not any cheap water anymore, and there's not just it's not just readily available, or we would already be tapped into it. So that's going to take some effort, and continue to look for those supplies and what might be the 30-year solution. The Red Arroyo project is a project that's been discussed and studied, and still needs to be studied. It certainly has some merit, but we need to understand, like anything, what is the return for the investment in that. And so just to kind of show you here, these monitoring wells are being installed to monitor the groundwater. Those will probably be in place for about a year to kind of see what's really there, to understand what it would take, what the cost would be to create that basin for diverting the Red Arroyo water to in the times that it's actually flowing. So some more work to be done there. Chuck and I had actually talked about maybe some the need for some gauging stations or something to fully understand what's coming down the creek. So I think those are the things that need to be pursued for this project, to understand, again, how much water and what's the cost of impounding that water.
Bill, is that a off-channel reservoir, or is that a ASR below ground?
It's not ASR. It is an impoundment, above ground impoundment off the channel of the actual creek.
Okay.
Bill, when do you expect those additional studies to be done?
We need to talk about any of the gauging, or see what we need to do as far as what's in the creek. The monitoring wells are being installed, and so I would say they probably need a full 12 months, through all the seasons to fully understand that. So, a year plus to understand that, I would
Okay.
think.
We were under the impression that there was going to be some studies done, I guess by HDR is they're doing the groundwater. And then I believe Jacobs was doing the feasibility on sizing the ponds for different cost analysis. I was under the impression that it was going to be done this spring.
Well, I think that in order for them to continue the effort on the cost for the pond, they're going to need to know what the groundwater issue is.
So we're looking at
So,
probably another year
I would
before
think
we.
so. Yeah.
So possibly during that time, we could also install some third-party gauging stations
Yeah.
to quantify the flows of the Red Arroyo.
Yeah, I think we need to discuss that for sure.
You're talking about more gauging stations in addition to what
Well,
the
there-
city already has?
There's been some disagreement on the amount of water that flows. UCRA, in partner with Jacobs, did a study using some of the latest modeling software that predicted upwards of 10,000 acre feet a year in a normal year. What is a normal year now? We don't really know that. Currently, right now, from a permitting standpoint, what the lawyers have said is that the city could transfer the water rights from Ben Ficklin Reservoir, which is 5,000 acre feet, and could divert that water. So obviously, we need to be able to know before we spend the money, is the water there? In the 4 years of gauging, we've got a gauging station that's a stormwater station, actually, that also grabs samples and measures rainfall. But right there at the water treatment plant where the Red Arroyo flows into the South Concho River, and anywhere from 4 to 7 or 8,000 acre feet a year, depending upon rainfall, has flowed past, according to our gauging stations and our latest models. Now, there's some other modeling that has been done that doesn't show near that amount of water, but those are, in my opinion, antiquated models. They're spreadsheet-based models, and they're not taking into consideration the urbanization that's gone on in the last 20 or 30 years. So, we need to totally vet this thing. We need to make sure that there's not going to be any significant problems if the structure's built as far as groundwater causing any problems, which I think that's basically just an engineering, something to overcome engineering-wise. But also we need to know the flow to make sure, and obviously we need a third party. I would think somebody like USGS, who does gauging stations all over the rivers and creeks all over Texas, maybe to come in, let them set up one of their cross sections and gauge it for a couple of years, and let's see what's going down there. There's a little bit of a where the gauging station we've got is now. There's a low water crossing right below it. So that can throw a little bit of a variable into the equation. Sometimes it shows it, sometimes it'll underpredict, sometimes it overpredicts. But typically when you have the water that flows through those three culverts, right there, an inch rain produces around 500 acre foot. And I can attest the last three rains we've had 1 inch rains. The last three, we've had one the end of March, one in the middle of April, and then this last one. Mathesfield measured anywhere from 1.13 to 1.2 inches on these last three rains, and each one of them produced 500 acre feet, according to my gauging station. So if that's accurate, that's 1,500 acre feet. That's 10% of our water for the year right there. And it can also be used, and this project could be multifaceted too. It could also be stormwater related. You can stop a lot of the pollutants that are going into the river and downstream to Ivy. And you could also impound it and use some of the water for downstream water rights as well. If you used, let's say we used our 5,000 acre feet that we had permitted that we could use, you could slowly release that, and you could also save in your lake levels. Instead of having to release out of Nasworthy or Twin Buttes for the water master, you could release the stormwater that's been impounded. So something that needs to be vetted, but it's certainly, as Bill said, it's certainly another option that we need to pursue.
So for us that are not water savvy, do you have like a master flow diagram or something that you could give us to look at that would tell us how it fits? Is that possible? So we can better understand the different parts and how it all ties together?
We can definitely work on something like that.
Okay,
There's a lot of parts.
I'm sure.
The disappointing part on the Red Arroyo is that this has been a topic and a discussion for 4 years.
Well, the data started 4 years ago. The actual feasibility study is basically 2 years old. When the first feasibility study done by Jacobs came out in June of 13, I believe. That said, yeah, this is probably a viable project. Originally, it was looked at to maybe contain several thousand acre feet, but just cost of excavation, it was not economically feasible. So something smaller to catch several smaller events and use it or release it and continue to do that. I mean, it'd be a management type thing for water utilities. They'd have to use it and refill it and use it and refill it. But like Bill said, it could be part of a portfolio. It's not going to be just, you're not going to just have one source that's going to be the, like you said, get out of jail free card. You're going to have
Right.
multiple ones and use them as they're available.
One quick question concerning that water. Is that unrestricted water? We impound it and capture it, or we?
Yes and no. Once it hits the Red Arroyo, it's waters of the state. But according to the initial discovery by the lawyers, that water could be basically diverted, and the city of San Angelo's permit for 5,000 acre feet from the Ben Ficklin Reservoir, which is a senior water rights permit, that could be transferred down to that facility. And since it's downstream, the only other people that have the water rights in that area are either the Upper Colorado River Authority or the city of San Angelo. So it would not affect downstream legally. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so don't hold me to that, but
Yeah.
that was the initial findings.
I think that's a real good question, Judge, and I think it's doable, but I don't think it could be considered an automatic or instantaneous by any means. There's some work there that would have to be done.
Sure.
So does that need to be pursued? If we're talking about a year for wells, is there a way we can pursue that and get an answer on that? Instead of saying, yes, there's captured water there, and yes, it makes sense economically, and then we have to go and fight that battle? Or can we go ahead and work on that now?
I think that that is associated with whether that is a project that's pursued or not, and it has been looked at and discussed considerably, and I hear exactly what you're saying, but I think that we need to make sure that is just that's a viable project.
Okay.
But certainly, it's not something that I hear exactly what you're saying. It's not something I want to say, okay, well, let's do that, and now we wait for 2 years to work out the legal issues.
I don't believe that you're going to get it fully vetted out. I think you're going to have to run through some of the traps to see whether, everything that's laid out is legal and works and matches and I's dotted and T's crossed and everything like that. But even at that point, that's when the fun will start. Seriously. That's when everything will probably come to a screeching halt. That's just my speculation.
Sure.
Via attorneys.
One other
Yep,
question
that's fine.
that raises. If it's not totally unrestricted and we would trade off for some superior water rights out of the Ben Ficklin, what benefit does that give us for the cost it takes to initiate this project if we would have to trade off other rights? Or is it those Ben Ficklin rights aren't always available?
They're not utilized right now. Those rights are not utilized. So that would just be additional water.
And I think what we found is, and through on some of your discovery on this thing, is that there's a whole lot of water that's generated. It's not generated. It's moved
Developed
from
water.
here to there.
Developed water.
Developed water between here and there on through all of our urbanized area, okay, of the city. And so with all the concrete, all the asphalt, everything, it's been developed as opposed to in a rural setting. It would obviously just most of it go down and then some parts flow through. But and so I'm thinking based upon how that was, how it was looked at, that generates a lot of developed water past where we have any kind of containment. Fair statement?
Until it gets down to Ivy.
Until it gets to Ivy.
But, you're talking about, Ivy's evaporation rates are anywhere from 150 to 250 acre feet a day. You're talking about a very small surface area. So if you do contain it here, your evaporation rates are going to be insignificant compared to what would happen if it went to Ivy.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay.
Good questions.
All right, and then the last item here is reclaimed water. The city embarked on a reuse study approximately a year ago to look at it taking the water from the wastewater treatment stream, and putting that through an ultrafiltration and RO process, and then maybe returning that. That study has been completed, and we need to be talking about that. In fact, I would like to bring that back to you at the next meeting, and I'd like to schedule that meeting today if possible, and have that presentation from the consultants to you. That is, it's not cheap, but it is probably one of our options that's available that we know is water. It's water that we can recapture and utilize. And so I think we need to give that a lot of thought and discussion on, is that a good process, a good project for the city to think about pursuing. So I'd really like
Just a quick question on that is, I know the city of Big Spring is utilizing that now. Where's the state on permitting for that? I mean, are they looking friendly at that, or is this a long shot? I mean, where's their tone right now?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Their tone is very supportive of this project. Obviously, every project stands on its own. They're working their way through this as well. But the state is very supportive on these type of projects. They see that obviously as, this is a real water to solve some of the needs in areas that are water scarce, and so they're very much behind these projects, and I don't think it'll be an issue at all to get it permitted. Obviously, Wichita Falls had some issues. But they worked through those, and it was good not only for them and the other consultants that watched that, it was good for the state to go through that process, because they were able to work out a lot of their processes through that as well. So I don't think getting it permitted will be an obstacle at all.
So the information from Big Spring, is that really readily available to us, to anybody, if we want to know how many gallons per day we're talking about?
Oh, absolutely.
So we can piggyback off of that?
Absolutely. That information is available. The city of Abilene, has completed their project. They're not doing direct potable reuse. They're actually putting it in the lake, but they're putting it in the lake right at the intake for the water supply. So it's
Same difference.
basically the same thing. And of course, Wichita Falls is doing direct potable reuse, and that's part of the question. Is what's the process that you want to use if you do return that water? Is do you want to put it back in the lake or in the river, or do you want to take it back into the treatment facility? And there's some real things to consider there. If you put it back into the lake or the streams, you've got even additional losses. You're also taking water that you're making very pristine and putting it, dirtying it back up. So there's not any cost savings there. It's probably more loss. So I think it's important to take a look at
Plus,
those things.
you would also be potentially opening up the door and the avenue for turning all that water that you've cleaned and turned around into public water.
Waters of the state.
You
Waters of the state.
absolutely do that, and it becomes a very
Instead of it
difficult
being
issue.
ours,
It
it's
becomes
everybody's.
everybody's.
And the best way to avoid that is to not do that. Right.
Did you say that study was completed? The
It is-
reclaimed water study?
It is complete. We have the draft report, and like I said, I would very much like to have the consultants present that to you on June 3rd, if we can schedule another meeting
I
at
would
that
think
time.
we should move on that sooner than later.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
It's a great commodity.
Do you have an idea of the cost per acre foot?
No, I do.
But you could have that at the next meeting.
I can have that shortly. I just don't, it's competitive. This project is, competitive is the wrong word. It's about the same cost of the Hickory water is what it would cost per, which is about 10 million gallons per million gallons per day. $10 million per million gallons per day. Right. That's about what the Hickory project cost. And that's about what any new water supply is going to cost.
I was going to say, that's what we all have to remember, that water's the new oil. I mean, that's what it is. It's nothing cheap about
There is-
what we're about
there's no more
about to
cheap
be
water.
embarking on.
Well, you know, you make a crazy statement, but, you know, we can limit our gas intake, or our fuel intake. We can quit taking our families out to eat, but we gotta have water. So we've gotta attack multiple sources and figure out what they are and plan for it and move forward.
Excellent.
And that brings us to the last issue here, and as we are, as I mentioned, doing a rate study. Because we've got to figure out how not only to continue to pay for the water supply projects that we have recently completed. We also have an aging infrastructure that we've got to maintain. We can't, it's not good business to go spend the money that we're having to spend to develop water supplies and then not have a tight water system to deliver it in. So we cannot forget those things, and we've got to continue that as well. Plus the development of new water supplies. So I mean, it's not going to be fun, but it's something that we've got to take a look at, and we have to be financially viable to be able to do those things. So we are looking at the rate structure, our rates, our cost of providing the services that we're providing, and what can we do to make sure that we are in good financial condition. I would also like to bring that study back to you probably towards the end of June. And I know that's a lot of meetings, but we've got a lot of things going on right now that we need to continue and to pursue. So, but we can talk about that, I guess, at the next meeting, actually setting a date for that. Part of the decisions that you make, and the recommendations that we make going forward will be folded into the rate study. So I want to follow up this next meeting with that in case we need to make some adjustments there. So, and that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Questions, anybody?
Um,
Any further comments?
What is the current, I know we've got the water main replacement program working still, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. What are we spending annually, and how many lineal feet and et cetera are we accomplishing?
I can tell you
And
not
you
as
can
much
bring an
as,
exactive later if you want.
and I would like to do that. I'll
That's fine.
make that as
It's
part
just
of the
one of those
presentation.
that again, because again, you know, we talk about, it's a lot, it takes a lot of money to fix those lines. I know that. And maybe the answer is, just like when you have a home mortgage, even if, you know, if you can pay a little bit more every year, then that pays that note off a little bit quicker. And, you know, that's just, again, might be a small chunk of this kind of thing, because we do have a significant amount of loss annually through the water main breakage, the systems that current systems we've got. Fair statement?
That's correct. Well, we're currently spending a little less than $2 million a year just in our capital budget for main replacement. I'm not sure that's enough, and as
Yeah.
part of this rate study, we're looking at what could be included in that, maybe to increase that. We just led a project for about $1.5 million to do about, how many feet of line? About 12,000 feet of
And it
main
was
to
how
be
much?
replaced. It's about $1.5 million is what the project is, to replace about 12,000 feet of main. And those are in different places. Part of it's on Sherwood Lane and some other places we kind of prioritized as bigger areas. We've also had some loss through some valves at the treatment plant that we have got a project that we are going to be letting pretty quickly to replace those valves so that we can mitigate that as much as possible. So with those things, we are making an impact on the actual water loss.
Is anybody working on desalinization anywhere close to us? Has that even been brought up as a topic? And how we could tie that systems in from south heading north?
It is a topic that's discussed a lot. Nobody is doing that of any significant in any significant manner right now closely. You know, obviously on the coastal area, the largest desal plant in one in the country is being done in the Corpus area right now, primarily for industrial uses to take some of the burden off of the municipal supplies there. And also, desal gives them more of a stable quality that some of the industry needs, so that's a good fit there. But certainly, desalination is an issue and a topic I think we'll continue to discuss quite a bit in West Texas, where there's a lot of potential for brackish water. Finding the larger, pools of that, if you will. It's deep, it's expensive, but it's water. And so I think that's going to continue to be a discussion. And I think that's, some of the things that we need to look at as well, is if what Ben brought up a minute ago about the treatment plant, will it treat other types of water? I think as you look at maybe doing reclaimed water or reuse, where you begin to install reverse osmosis systems, and how can you use that on a larger scale? Maybe for because there's a lot of there is brackish water in this area, just not of significant quantity. But when you start looking at things more regionally, maybe there's a way to solve, by utilizing water in specific areas and trading things. And I'm not speaking specifics, but I think it's valuable to begin to look at what infrastructure we install and what's the full magnitude of that use.
Right now, Commissioner Bacon, he is heading up a study for this region, and it's on desalinization. And the state, we were fifth. This region was fifth on the list. He was able to move us up to first. So they're currently doing that study right now. So we should know something in the next couple of meetings. We should know more information.
UCRA did one in 2003. Punched 3 or 4 wells out west, pretty close to San Angelo, like around Murchison, Knickerbocker type area. Very, very deep water. And the sands were tight and the water just wasn't there. It wasn't economically feasible. But you can look out a little further west. There's a formation, there's a Santa Rosa out there that a lot of the oil field is using right now for frack water. There's a lot of water well production going on out there right now. So, and that probably isn't going to go on for maybe, 20, 30 more years, but that could be another potential source out there. And that's going to be farther west, west of Murchison, Barnhart, that type area. But there's several 100-gallon-a-minute wells with 5,000 TDS, which is easily treatable water. So maybe you can, after the boom is over again for the fracking, maybe you could network a lot of those wells, build you a desal plant out there, and have another source.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Bill, I would assume that these options came from perhaps a water supply resource plan or some kind of a document that says these are the initiatives that we're going to pursue to meet the short-term, medium-term, long-term needs. And I was wondering if that's available, that we could read it and kind of get educated on it.
These options are just the specific issues that we are currently working on. I can provide any additional information that we have on any of those for you.
Okay.
And Roland, that may be something that we need as a group to prioritize. I mean, that's what our task is here for, is to advise council on what would be the best alternatives. Maybe that's something that we should.
I think it would be wise that we need an understanding as in terms of when we need to pull the trigger, when these projects need to come online, and so I think it'd be worth exploring that. And then I have one more question. The report, the flow chart, the different level reports that we get from Ann that gets provided to us. It's good information, but I don't know how to interpret, the gate action, those valves and that are closed and open. And I can understand the water plant high service pumpage and what that means, perhaps. But it'd be nice if you guys could walk us through that, perhaps the next meeting, just so that I have a better understanding of what this means.
Sure. Absolutely.
Judge, you had a question?
Mr. Chairman, back to the desalinization situation. Of course, it's kind of unique, and I'm honored as the county judge to be on the Municipal Water Development Board. And Mr. Weiss is correct. Rick Bacon, who took my position as Precinct 3, and has tried to move to the forefront and watching for the desalinization for the rural areas. Looks like that holds the greatest potential. And when we get for sure the updates on the aquifers and the availability, and hopefully at some point in time the feasibility of desalinization will reach us. But the county in the past has never been involved in the water business. We own no rights, we own no delivery systems. But the fact remains is that we have 15 to 20,000 people living outside of the municipal limits that would constitute one of the largest counties in Texas if they were just in West Texas in our area. Let me rephrase that are depending totally on ground supply, of which has been stressed for 3 years now.
Yes.
And by the efforts of Mr. Weiss, how many CCNs are you operating?
Well, we actually, we own one CCN, but we operate 3 other water districts
Yes.
in the county.
And our problem with groundwater on the surface water, which is what everyone for municipal supply seem to focus on, can heal up in a 48 to 72 hour period. One event can heal that situation for a number of years. It's a much longer term situation having to do with groundwater to get it recharged, and they're under stress. So that's part of the reason we chose to start getting proactive to I don't know where that's going to lead us, but the county's going to have to start paying attention to the water supply. Hence, that's the reason that I'm honored to get to be here for informational purposes. Most of the county or city residents are also my county constituents. And I don't know either one of two ways, either dealing with the groundwater issues with small desalinization plants strategically placed, I think long-term is what we're hoping that would come to, utilizing brackish water, or through our efforts we can strengthen the municipal supply to the point where there was available water to sell to some of the regional CCNs to take that load off. So it's time this last few years has got our attention, so we're ready to be a partner in trying to solve these problems the best we can. It's going to take a community effort to
Because the
make
further
all
we
this
get away
work.
from what happened 2 years ago,
Everyone
the
forgets.
less we think about it,
Yes.
and it's going to hit us again. So that concerns me. I'm interested in knowing the toilet water, things we could do, the shower water, things we have immediate impact on. What can we do there on that conservation side? And I don't want to use the term requirement, but maybe that's what it is. I mean, I don't know what we could save. I mean, that's immediate to me. If council said, yeah, that's something that makes a lot of sense. If we're talking about 50,000 gallons a day, or if we're talking about 1 million gallons a day, we need to know that. No matter where you go to any of the Metroplex area, you go to Austin, you go to San Antonio, they're there. You don't have a choice. I mean, that's what you install. And so I'd be interested in knowing what would have an immediate impact. Doesn't really hurt the consumer, doesn't hurt our neighbor, but it would save us a lot of gallons, I hope.
Well, certainly, new development, that's, makes a lot of sense. Retrofitting, that's a little bit more difficult to do. Conservation is an interesting thing. Probably nowhere have I seen the magnitude or the positive impact that this community, had on water use. When of course, nothing makes you conserve more than the fact that, you're thinking that you're going to be out of water pretty quickly. That's real. And so I think that the per capita usage in San Angelo right now is probably one of the lowest in the states. So I mean, I think that there's been a lot done here. What you will see, though, I think, is if there's not another dire situation, it'll continue to creep back up. People put a lot of money into their yards and landscaping, and they want water to be there and to maintain those. So I think it's an ongoing process of education, and for one thing, and just the discussion that we're not out of the woods. In fact, as I mentioned a while ago, the situation that happened last year is almost on us again. And without any significant rain in the Ivy watershed, we're going to need to be doing something, and we're going to need to keep our water usage as low as possible.
Yes, sir. There's one more thing. I just want to kind of dive on Judge's comments and make sure that I'm understanding this exactly right on what our purpose and our intent of what this is, and that this is kind of what I'm hoping the purpose and the intent is that, and this is the discussions that I've had for many, many years, is that while we're here technically representing the water utility district for the water district for San Angelo, the city of San Angelo, we're hoping to maybe look beyond that too, for how, because we all are one community, whether we're in Grape Creek or whether we're in San Angelo or Cristoval, and I know it's one economic unit. I realize that the city boundaries only go yay far, but I think one of the discussions that I had, and I forget who it was with, but in the past, was that it was kind of the intent and the hope that the city could be in a larger water production sales business to other municipalities and such in our little small region. And maybe I'm stepping over bounds of where we can and should be going, but
I think I think that's where things are going. I think that's important for us to look at more regionally how we solve this problem. I think the council, obviously I can't speak for them, but looking at the ordinance the new ordinance for this board includes the judge.
he wouldn't be here
and
if
includes-
it wasn't the intent.
Right, and it includes rural water.
That's
so that's why
correct.
Ben's here. So I think there's clearly that thought that this is bigger than just the city limits of San Angelo, and that we need to work together to solve the problem.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Just one clarification.
And one more thing, would you send us, we'll give you all of our email, I know you got that, but our cell phone numbers and things like that, so if we need to communicate with each other, we've got everybody's information.
Absolutely.
And then June 3rd, can y'all check your calendar? That's a Wednesday, first Wednesday.
I'm good.
You okay, Chuck?
I'm
Ben?
good.
Yep, good.
Kendall?
Good.
You're good. You gonna be in town?
What time?
9 o'clock?
9 o'clock? I can be here.
Can you make that presentation we talked about, and any other information you give us be helpful? I guess our point, the other thing that some of us have talked about, I want us to be regular. I want us to be a step ahead. I think we need to be on the leading edge. I think we don't need to be afraid to put anything on the table, and I think we need to push it. It's important. It's not going away, and not saying anything about before, but sometimes it just didn't get pushed. It depends on rainfall. It depends on how cool it is. If we have 100 days of 100-degree weather again, it's going to make all of our times valuable, and we've all got a vested interest in what we do for this. And so I just want y'all to know we're going to take it serious, and we're going to push things forward based off of y'all's recommendations and how we decide to do it. We're not going to take it lightly. Okay? Is that a fair statement with everybody?
Very good.
We're on board.
So, okay. Any other business come before us today? Anybody else have anything? If not, we're adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you.